Today, we are going to learn something that is very useful in the drone making community. I don't know. This right here is a 7-inch quadcopter. What I mean by 7 inches is that the propellers that are attached to this thing are actually 7 inches long. There we go. That is one propeller right there. The motors right here are connected through this wire that goes up there into the inside. In the last video, we talked about kind of what an ESC does. All of the solder joints on here that tell the motors how fast to spin are hand soldered. Today, we're going to be learning how to solder. It's actually a pretty easy skill once you get the hang of it, but it's super useful if you are wiring things up and you need to just connect 2 wires together. So let's go through the things that you need and then let's wire something up, all right? And I've got this super sick desk that actually allows me to just pull it up, and it's a little bit of a mess right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and just... So there's a few must-haves when it comes to soldering. You need your soldering iron. This thing is a super basic soldering iron. It also doubles as a wood burner, and some soldering wire. And this stuff is just a metal wire that melts at a low temperature. And the basic idea behind soldering is that we are melting this metal onto the wire, and then melting this metal onto the other wire, and then melting those two together, and it will harden together as one solid wire. And I have these super derpy glasses here. When you're soldering, it is possible for this stuff to fly at you. Better to be safe than sorry. And you know what? They do what I need them to do, so I'm happy. And then the other thing you need is some steel wool or something like that, and a wet sponge. I just ran this under the sink. Both of these things help with cleaning the tip so that the tip of our soldering iron doesn't oxidize and ruin our solder joints. And then the last thing, obviously you need some wire. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just stick this in this steel wool right here and kind of scrape off the little bits that's on the tip there. I'm going to stick it to this wet sponge, and we're basically just trying to remove all of the nasty bits and pieces that is on the edge of the soldering iron. The heat of your soldering iron is actually in relation to how big the wire is. That's not a hard rule, but for smaller wires you typically want a lower heat, and bigger wires you want a hotter heat. I took off all of the wires onto here so we can actually practice soldering this thing here. Alright, so here's what you want to do. You want to take your wire and just cut the end off with your fingernails. I just pinched it and pulled it off. Not all wires are like this, but some of them you can just pinch them and take it off. They also make things like these, and it will also cut the tip off of that wire as well. Then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and twist the end. That way it all stays together, and cover the tip of that in solder. So this solder right here, as you can see if I touch it on there, it's just going to melt just like that. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and touch the end of the solder and the soldering iron to the wire and melt the solder onto the wire until it just about covers it up. And then you want to move your soldering iron away quickly, and you can see that that glob is now melted onto the tip of that wire. And then we're going to take our wire, we already added solder to that, push it down on there, melt both of the solder on the wire and on the plate, and then let go, and that is now on there on that little plate. Now it's not all the way covered, so if you want to go ahead and just add a little bit of solder on top. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect solder joint. See how the surface is nice and smooth and shiny, and it is like a round ball on there. That's tight, that's not coming off. That's a very low friction solder joint. The reason that a nice solder joint is important is because if your solder joints are sloppy, it'll actually cause friction, and friction of electricity actually causes heat. And if there's too much heat that is built up in this little solder joint, it can actually desolder itself. Now that you kind of understand how to solder, we're going to go ahead and build an actual circuit here, just a simple circuit. That way you can kind of understand why this is useful. So right here I have 2 batteries connected to 2 different wires. I have this little wire here that's called a resistor. I got a tiny little on and off switch with 2 little prongs coming out of the back, and I have here a small LED which stands for light emitting diode, and I have this extra wire that we messed with at the beginning. Now I'm not going to go into great detail about how this short circuit works, just because we can do that in a different video, but just so it slightly makes sense, we're going to start with our battery, and then we're going to follow the black wire and hook that up to a switch, and we're going to hook that switch up to a resistor. We're going to hook the resistor up to another wire, we're going to hook that wire up to the light, and that is going to be hooked back up to the battery. And just like that, you can see it will complete a circuit, and we'll have a full working thing right here. Just for safety, I'm going to go ahead and take these batteries out of our little pack, and we're going to go ahead and solder the black wire from our battery pack into our switch. Clean the tip of our soldering iron. Get it on here, and I'm gonna melt the tip, and I should only hold it on there for a little bit, but as you can see now the tip of that wire is covered in solder. Do the exact same thing to the end of the switch here. Good rule of thumb is after each solder joint you should go ahead and clean your soldering iron. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold the wire and the joint that we want to solder, so I'm gonna just hold this down until this melts, and as you can see that is now on there. We're gonna hook this up to our resistor, I think. I don't remember exactly what I said I was gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in a little clamp here that I have. Super useful. Since we got it here, we might as well solder the other side as well. And we're gonna go ahead and solder this onto our switch. And now as you can see, that solder joint is on there and they are both connected to the switch. Let's go ahead and just add some solder to both ends of this red wire. Sometimes if you leave the soldering iron on there for too long and then pull away, it will make this little spike. These are not great. Melt that down and you can get that solder off, and then you can go ahead and just resolder. And now let's go ahead and solder the end of this resistor onto this red wire that we just prepared. Stuck together, and that is not coming apart. We'll go ahead and tin the ends of our LED, and let's solder the other side onto there. I say let's go ahead and throw our batteries back in here and see if this thing worked. And moment of truth. Oh my gosh, we did something wrong. What's going on? I soldered my diode on the wrong way. Hey, check it out. We got ourselves our little light and our switch and everything all hooked up together. And the switch, you can turn it on and off. And this is all being run through all these little solder joints that we put along the way. Right, and there you go. That's just the basic idea behind how soldering works and how you can actually use it in a practical sense. If you're interested in more content just like this one, go ahead and subscribe. Check out the other stuff that I make. And let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. I love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, this has been DI Fly.